Let's move now to teaming up to build a relapse prevention plan. It takes a team to stop a relapse. And this one, it's either a relapse intervention plan or it's rest in pieces. The choice is yours. And I usually use this RIP or RIP periodically once I teach people the concept of a relapse intervention plan. So I believe there's 7 crucial steps of really proactive relapse prevention planning. The first step is I want to get a personal abstinence contract agreement with my patient. Even if they signed one for the program I'm working for, this is different. This is one between me and the person I'm working with. Are you willing to sign this? And there's different versions of abstinence contracts. With my chronic pain patients, it's a medication management contract. So there's different ways of building this contract, but that needs to be set. That's my piece that I need to absolutely have in place. That's the foundation. Then the next step is to develop an immediate relapse intervention plan. When I consult with programs, I teach them to do an AMA block plan, leaving against medical advice, and it's based on this relapse intervention plan. Then I want to help people see problems as they come, so they're more likely to use the radar method rather than the escape method, to learn that there's setups for high-risk situations. There's ways that you can see them coming. In the relapse counseling workbook, there's a whole list of high-risk situations that different clients of Terry's and then myself for my books experienced before they ended up drinking or using other drugs. So learning how to identify high-risk situations, and more importantly, normalizing that you are guaranteed to hit high-risk situations and relapse justifications. It's going to happen. Then we teach them some tools I call situation mapping. I'm going to do some of that with you, show you some examples of that today. Then managing high-risk situations. How do you do that? How do you implement a cognitive behavioral restructuring problem solution model that's easy and effective to implement? Next is, how are we going to help people manage problematic decision points? Decision points are the spot between the urge and the action. So I'm going to say more about that in a little bit. So we want to teach them how to manage these problematic decision points. And finally, develop a new recovery plan that's strategically geared towards identifying and managing future high-risk situations or relapse justifications. It's different than the foundation recovery plan. This is a relapse prevention-based learning how to look out and use radar to see trouble coming. So let's talk about relapse intervention planning, RIP. So our goal is to have an effective plan. The last resort plan is to stop the alcohol or other drug use quickly should it occur. But my beginning plan is to stop the relapse process before it ends up in alcohol or drug use. I sell this as an insurance policy. And the metaphor I use is, if you have, how many of you have car insurance? How many of you are just getting basic liability, and how many of you are paying the extra premiums for full coverage? Well, how much coverage do you need to protect yourself from a future relapse? Are you willing to pay the premiums? And this is where I help them set up their insurance policy. Because we need to give them some tools how they can stop the relapse cycle or the actual chemical use quickly. And the first part is we need to engage with them and use active empathic listening to explore with them what they think they can do. I don't want to give them their answers. I want to see what they're thinking. If they're struggling with this, say, well, what do you think other people have done? What do your group members do? What do people in the meetings you go to do? So what do you think you need to do? So I want to come up with at least, I work in groups of 3. I'm not listing this here, but just a coaching tip. When I work with people, I use 3 bulleted answers. I do not allow long, elaborate sentences. They're really short, bullet to the point. So what are you going to do? I'm going to immediately call my sponsor. I'm going to immediately call the program. I'm going to tell my wife. I'm going to tell my husband. So come up with 3 doable things. If you're in the middle, if you're up at 10 or even 11 o'clock and already used, is that going to work? So I do some problem solving. Now, I said, what do you want me to do when I'm working with somebody as a counselor, therapist, or coach? I do mostly empowerment coaching now. Very rarely do I do therapy, even though I'm licensed to do so. But one of the things I ask them, I'm not going to tell them what I will do. I want to ask them, what do you think will be helpful? The common answer I get from the most people is, kick me in the butt. I says, no, I'm not willing to do that because I don't think that'll work. Okay, what do you think will work? Some of the things people come up with is, remind me of all the benefits that I'm getting out of my recovery. Refresh my memory of all the bad things that happened when I was using. Remind me and empower me that I can do this. Give me permission to succeed. These are different things that different patients of mine have come up with over the years. Then, involving accountability partner, and I say appropriate, that's bold, underlined, appropriate. For a lot of people, and especially in early recovery, a spouse or family member is not the best person to be an accountability partner. Good people are people that you're in recovery with, people that have some time, that look to have a successful life. Other extended family members who really want to see you be successful with your recovery, but you help problem solve to make sure they're appropriate. And appropriate means they're willing to not enable you, and they're willing not to shame and blame you. And I start with 3. Who are 3 appropriate significant others that will support your sobriety? What are they supposed to do? What do you think? Now, I want you to meet with each one of those and share your starting point, because they may have some other ideas. So I send them out to work with their accountability partners. And again, this is all part of the relapse intervention plan. So some things they could do to stop quickly. Well, recognize you started using. Now that sounds like, wow, that's a no-brainer. But some people end up using, and then all of a sudden, a little bit later, they recognize what they did. Like for me, it was just less than a minute after I picked up and popped those Vicodin that I recognized, uh-oh. And that was a very, very, very bad night, by the way. At that time, that was probably one of the worst nights of my life, because I had promised my daughter, I had promised myself, and I had promised my karate sensei, Richard Kim, that I would never use alcohol and pain pills again. And I committed that to them. And then I committed to my sponsor, Larry. But at that moment in time, that was a bad thing. So I didn't recognize it until literally after I'd swallowed the pills. Literally, it was so automatic and unconscious to pick that bottle up like I'd done hundreds of times before. Acknowledge that alcohol and other drug use can lead to serious consequences. So think it through. What's the best that'll happen if you drink and use? What's the worst that'll happen if you drink and use? What's the worst that'll happen if you stay in recovery? And what's the best that'll happen if you stay in recovery? So I use some cognitive behavioral restructuring questions at this point and help them look at some tools that they might already have and just don't know they have even. Clue, stop immediately. So don't go to the liquor store, Steve. Stop. And a little side note, what really helped me that night, as I was cleaning my closet, cleaning my bedroom, I was playing my Beatles album. And about the time that I recognized what I did, the record player changed and the Beatles song Help came on. help, I need somebody. And I heard that differently. I heard it, the help me if you can was to my higher power. And that was my steps 1, 2, and 3, right in a song for me. And today, every time I hear that, it takes me back to steps 1, 2, and 3, my original. And I shared that with Larry, and he worked through all the steps with me. But this was immediately stop using. You don't have to keep going forward, and you can ask for help. Get out of the situation that supports using. Now, that sounds like a no-brainer for a lot of people, but a lot of people need to do that. Now, when I worked a lot with incarcerated people in the California prison system, and a lot of them said, Steve, we cannot get out of our cells. I say, can you move from one end of your bunk to the other? Yeah, that's doable. Okay, so when you're working with people, because what we did was we trained California incarcerated inmates to become certified alcohol and drug counselors, and they began running treatment programs in the prisons. And so coaching them and giving them ideas, like this is the one thing when I got to this point in the training, this is they can't get out of their cell. So I says, okay, what are some things they can do by physically moving to a different area in their cell? And then what can they do when they get there? Immediately call for help. And for some people, it's calling for spiritual help. For others, it's getting on the phone, getting out of a relapse-prone environment and into a recovery-prone environment. Most areas have Alano clubs that have long hours that are open at many different hours of the day or night. So get somewhere or get with somebody. Call your accountability partners and see if one of them can spend time with you.